$800 billion. This week, SpaceX reached a valuation larger than Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman combined. And exactly 10 years after they landed their first booster, they just brought number 550 back to Earth. What you are witnessing at SpaceX right now is not just space history. It is the greatest stock market story ever told. On Sunday, around midnight California time, a Falcon 9 rose into the sky over Vandenberg. 27 Starlink satellites were on board. Nothing special for SpaceX anymore. This was already the 162nd launch this year, but this launch had special significance. 8 minutes after liftoff, the booster gently touched down on the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. That was landing number 550. Let me show you why this number is historic. On December 21st, 2015, almost exactly 10 years ago, SpaceX achieved the first landing of an orbital booster. The aerospace industry held its breath. Boeing executives publicly said it was a nice trick, but economically pointless. They were wrong. 550 landings later, a SpaceX launch costs a fraction of what the shuttle generation had to pay. Each of these boosters flies an average of 10 to 15 times. The record holder? Booster 1067, 32 flights. Imagine a Saturn V that could fly to the moon 32 times. This is not science fiction. This is happening right now, as we speak. And that's exactly why this week brought the news that made Wall Street and Washington sit up and take notice. SpaceX is preparing for an initial public offering in 2026. The current valuation is $800 billion. Let's put that in perspective. The Apollo program, $280 billion in today's currency. Boeing, $170 billion. The entire US aerospace industry, combined, about $500 billion. SpaceX, a single company, is worth more than all of them together. CFO Brett Johnson sent a memo to employees last week. The share price is $421 per share. In July, it was $212. The valuation has doubled in 5 months. And here is where it gets interesting. This is just the beginning. When the initial public offering comes, SpaceX is targeting a total valuation of $1.5 trillion. That would be the largest initial public offering in history, bigger than Saudi Aramco in 2019. To give you another comparison, if SpaceX reaches that $1.5 trillion valuation, they would be worth more than the entire gross domestic product of Russia and more than the market value of Amazon and Tesla combined. We are talking about a company that did not exist when most of you watched the moon landings. Now you're probably wondering, is that justified? Let's look at the facts. SpaceX doesn't just dominate spaceflight. They are spaceflight. The numbers for 2025 tell the story. 162 launches, and the year is not even over yet. 90% of all global payloads are transported by SpaceX. $15.5 billion in expected revenue, and for 2026 analysts are projecting $22 to $24 billion. But here's what makes this really remarkable. They are doing this while spending billions on Starship development. Most companies would be drowning in red ink. SpaceX is cash flow positive and has been for years. But that's just the launch service. Starlink is the real gold mine. Over 9,300 active satellites in orbit. 8 million customers worldwide. Subscription model, recurring revenue. It's like having Netflix, but in space. Every month, millions of people pay between $50 and $150 for internet from space. Do the math. That's potentially over $1 billion in monthly recurring revenue. And then there's direct to sell. Your smartphone connects directly with satellites. No more dead zones. Nowhere on Earth. Canada just activated it. India is close to approval. A market of 1.4 billion people. T-Mobile in the United States is rolling it out right now. The Bloomberg memo contains a fascinating phrase: insane flight rate. SpaceX wants to push the launch cadence to an insane level, not for more Starlinks, for something much bigger. Starship is the largest rocket system ever built. It is 10 times more powerful than the Saturn V, and it is fully reusable. SpaceX has already completed over a dozen test flights. NASA selected them for Artemis. Starship will bring astronauts to the moon. But Musk is thinking further. The memo lists 3 goals for the initial public offering money. The first is to ramp up Starship production, to achieve multiple flights per week, not per month. Think about what that means. We could see more Starship launches in a single month than the space shuttle flew in an entire year. Second, AI data centers in space. Yes, you heard that right. Data centers in orbit. Why space? Because cooling is free in the vacuum of space. Solar power is constant. And data transmission to ground stations can be faster than undersea cables for certain applications. It sounds crazy until you remember that people said the same thing about landing rockets. And third, a moon base, permanent infrastructure on the lunar surface. Not a flags and footprints mission like Apollo, a real base where people live and work. Sound like science fiction? That is what people said about reusable rockets too. Not everyone is enthusiastic. Reuters quotes analysts who are skeptical. The valuation is based on projects that do not exist yet. Space data centers are unproven. A moon base is decades away. And Starship is not yet operational. The critics have a point. SpaceX is selling the future. Some analysts call it the biggest speculative bet since the dot-com bubble. Others say it is the most undervalued company in America. The debate is fascinating because both sides make compelling arguments. But, and here is where it gets philosophical, that is what Kennedy did in 1961 too. When he said, "We are going to the moon," there was no rocket, no technology, not even a plan. There was only the decision that it would happen. You lived through that. You know what it feels like when a nation or a company decides to make the impossible possible. The difference is, in 1961, it took roughly the entire gross domestic product of the United States, about 3% of it, to make Apollo happen. SpaceX is doing something arguably more ambitious with private capital. No taxes, no government programs. Just investors who believe in the vision. This is either the most brilliant business strategy in history or the biggest bubble that will ever burst. And honestly, we will not know which one it is for another 5 to 10 years. But here is what makes this moment so significant. For the first time since Apollo, we are watching something in space that feels genuinely historic. Not incremental, not evolutionary, revolutionary. Here is what we know for certain. In 10 years, SpaceX went from a ridiculed idea to 550 landings. From near bankruptcy to $800 billion. From impossible to inevitable. From a company that could not get a single contract to a company that launches more than China, Russia, and Europe combined. In 2026, we will see if the stock market sees it the same way. One question remains. When SpaceX goes public, will they be the next Amazon, a company that seemed overvalued until it changed everything? Or will they be the next WeWork, a company with a great story but no substance? I want to hear your opinion. Is SpaceX worth $800 billion? Or are we living in a tech bubble? And the really interesting question, would you buy SpaceX stock at $421 a share? Would you put your retirement money on Elon Musk's Mars dreams? Write it in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think, because this is the kind of decision that defines generations. Your generation decided to go to the moon with government money. This generation has to decide whether to go to Mars with private capital. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel. Here you get the most important space news you really need to understand every single day. Because whether SpaceX succeeds or fails, this is the story we will be telling our grandchildren about.